Hi, I'm Tina, the Joy Oracle at InnerDelight, and welcome to the Divine Joy Circle. And thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here. I'm especially excited today as I have a very special guest joining me for a Joyful Connections interview. And this is our beautiful Aliky. Hi, Aliky, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Oh, great, thanks. It's so nice to be here with you. Oh, for
Right.
anyone who has not had a chance to meet you yet, Aliky, let me just make sure I say all of this right, is a spiritual consultant and facilitates the activation and acceleration of the Global Inner Leadership Collective for women and men who are looking to master their lives while creating exponential success with extraordinary efficiencies in career and in life. Your message is all about allowing people to transform their stress into optimal well being, right? And in this series of Joyful Connections interviews, it's for soul inspired entrepreneurs who have discovered how to let joy be their guide to creating a life and business that are worth waking up for. And I say that that definitely describes you. So would you like to just share a little bit about what does this mean to you to let joy be your guide, and how has that played out in your life and
Well,
business?
thank you for asking, Tina, and thank you for the introduction. I appreciate that. And this is something really near and dear to my heart and my purpose, actually, and how I facilitate that, not only have for myself, but for those around me, as having been a leader in corporate for 23 years, but then also for those that I've assisted both from an inner growth perspective to really tune in to, like, let's say that love FM or that frequency and joy, and then drive that in their business so that their outer world really truly reflects their ability to expand for themselves. So what does that really mean? It means that I can help and facilitate folks transmute that stress into gold so that they can actually live the highest expression of their body, their mind, and their spirit, and then in their environment, and bring back that love and that bliss and that deep fulfillment, and the bliss so that they can lead their extraordinary life that they really deserve.
That's beautiful. So how is this showing up in corporate world? What's the how is it received?
Well, it's received by a few very sensitive or intuitive folks that have actually climbed the ladder, so to speak, in the hierarchy through greater intention beyond themselves. And it's been received reasonably well, I'd say. It's not for everybody. Also, the entrepreneur really loves this work, right, on their own world. And there's a lot of folks that I have found have either felt disconnected or even left the corporate game and started their own game to expand and grow themselves. And this is who's pretty much receiving the work very easily, actually. There's a couple of ways that I can actually demonstrate or show to you. One of my clients, for example, she's a CEO. She's worked in the corporate, but she's moved out into her own consultancy where she started that up like a consultant for several years. And for her, she was suffering from some stress related ailments or, insomnia or not sleeping. For example, parting with prior relationships and actually really moving through them. And what had happened for her, she had a vision to create yet another part and aspect of her business, but because of some of the stress that is apparent stress, but really feedback mechanism holding her back, what we do is actually work with her in her environment and the actual stresses for herself individually, not just on a mindset perspective, but at mental, physical, and spiritual level, and the environment. So as she expanded and transmuted that stress into gold, thus did her business. And so now she's not only expanding to another area, but she's like more of the entrepreneur type and the CEO of her own corporation and gets to create the boundaries and lives the life that she loves. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, that's so, and it's so important to address things. I think many times people will have some insight as to the immediate results or the effect of, or the symptoms, of whatever is causing the stress. But if they're not looking at their environment, not just in their home environment, but what is the environment of their relationships? What's the environment of where they work? If that is not addressed and balanced with everything else, as you say, heart, body, mind, soul,
Mm.
spirit, all of that is addressed, then it is like driving with three wheels. It's a little wonky, right? If you're in a car.
Precisely, and actually on the three wheels, usually folks revolve around, the payoff, or having their needs met through the top 3 to 4 values that is in their hierarchy of values. And when they're in alignment with their truest values, that starts to inspire their spirit, their joy. And when they're really clear about that, like with absolute clarity, the way they introduce themselves, what they think and think about, where they've got the most organization, and start to ask themselves the higher quality questions, it becomes more and more apparent as they align with their values that they stay true to that value and not subordinate to somebody else's hierarchy of values. That's where I find in the corporate realm that a lot of that stress or resentment, possibly anger or frustration, can really come from. So it's not just really like positivity or psychology in the workplace. It's really environmental about that person's beingness. And then so when they start to master that self-mastery versus, at the whim of their environment or their colleagues or the matrix, so to speak, it becomes more laser focused and efficient, if that makes sense. The efficiencies start to arise just from that alone.
Yeah, what comes to mind, it's so great, because it's like, wow, how many people take time to actually get really clear on what truly matters to them? Maybe they know, but then the next step is how many feel confident or comfortable to speak up about that, especially if they realize that they're in a corporate environment or in a work environment somewhere, or in a relationship where they can see that these values are not exactly matched. So they kind of look to see, well, what can I tolerate? What can I put up with? And you start compromising, right?
You're right on. And what I love to say, this is almost like an image from my teacher as he explained it to me us once. It's where's the finger pointing versus looking at the fingertip. It's what's that big picture? What's that why in you? Why you chose this vehicle to express your gifts through this particular art form, or this ability to work and express yourself through your inner leader. And as you wake in the inner executive, your outer world revolves around that. So when you really tap into that why, back to your original question, is finding that joy and, coming from that place as you wake up every morning, is when you're in tune with that why, you will always get the support and challenge. However, because that's the balance, right? Balance, love, hate, fear, guilt, support and challenge. If you embrace both sides because you're very true in alignment with your values, it becomes on the way versus in the way, and you're able to embrace both sides and transmute the stress literally into gold, and the golden nuggets come along the way. And that's what I find truly helps people, so that, like you said, there's boundaries, but then there's you coming from a place from your heart when you're in poise versus people can reject your projections, but they will not reject your heart.
That's a good one. Can you say it again?
People will reject your projections, but they will not reject your heart. There's a sense of certainty when you feel whole, when you come from that poise from your heart. Even in business.
Yeah.
And you can have exchanges across, the business, the negotiation table, in and out of meetings. And when you're whole and fully there, especially if you're in service to a client or a customer, when you're fully there listening, they feel fully heard. And that's part of the art of relationships as well.
That's a big point, isn't it? Do you find that when you're working within corporate, particularly, especially with women, I think I've noticed that a lot of women find it quite challenging to stay connected to their feminine essence, balancing that masculine and feminine energy in a corporate environment that's often being very masculine driven. What is your take on that?
Actually, there's a couple of golden nuggets, no pun intended, that I'd love to share with you that I actually work through with some of the women. And you're spot on the money that there's a polarity situation. Because when you're in do mode or masculine polarity and creating the structures and making and creating finance, but then in more of a receiving mode as you're in your feminine, it's quite a juxtaposition, because even we as women, whether we go home to family or children, we go home and we still give, because we're preparing often, the household or the children and giving at the same time. So what I love to do is help guide the women specifically with some of the physical, nutrition, and spiritual aspects to balance their hormones, to help them get the cortisol reset that they can through empowering them with skills and key techniques to do that, to reset, right? So they've got the resilience, they can reset, but then also really see and have the grid or the masculine structure in place, be it the corporation, be it a timetable, something that they can fall within to be their feminine selves. Women are incredibly productive and incredibly skilled in the workforce, whether they're entrepreneurs or in corporate. We have this unique ability to multitask. I mean, we can receive a piece of information and literally bring it in through, the right brain, and it kind of comes out and gets very filtered, very net way. And it's very unique, but we can also fragment ourselves. So I teach a few techniques and strategies where the women, one, backing up, can reset, come from a place of power, enable them to fall back in and relax in that masculine structure so that they can create and do their magic in an efficient way. And, I don't like to just blame, the hormone balances, and then the cortisol's out of whack and, all of that stuff, and the adrenals and the fatigue and all that. That's all part and parcel of it. But when a woman's more empowered, you see them actually thrive and do incredibly well, because we have unique abilities and we can work with the men and collaborate a lot more when we don't emasculate the man too. So that's a whole other conversation. But I also, part of my background in 23 years, I've been in the IT industry, very male dominated. And through ups and downs and cycles of burnout and whatnot, I've learned truly through my own path to master my level of what I can do to navigate the matrix, so to speak, with flow and more ease.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about lots of different ways of dealing with stress, transforming stress, turning that stress into goals. What would be your top 3 tips that anybody, anywhere can do throughout the day?
Beautiful. Okay. So the first one that I would love to suggest everybody does, aside from counting your blessings, is literally have a gratitude list. And actually, Tina, I do recall a beautiful blog that you wrote some time ago around gratitude. When I say gratitude, when you open up what you are grateful for, either through your values, uncovering that, or for you personally, what you're grateful for as it is now, even if you're stressed, it's actually a great challenge to do that when you're stressed. Not comparing yourself to anybody else, but for where you're at within your life now. If you have a list that you're grateful for, you can always refer back to that list when you're not necessarily feeling as open-hearted, and refer back to that as a way of resetting. Because the simple math and the logic is, when you are grateful, you have and therefore receive more to be grateful for, versus seeing the cup as half full. And even if you hold a cup, out in front of you, the cup eventually gets heavy, even if it's got no liquid in it. So that's one very simple thing that anyone can do in any place, any time. And even if you think and feel into that, your angelic brain starts to be ignited and you start to think from your heart. And it could even be a family member or someone that brings you that inner joy. So that's the first thing, and a fundamental baseline for everything. What that also does is helps you focus on one thing, like one specific exercise about gratitude. So it's metaphorically going to, part of the second thing, the second tip is, it's going to reel you in from your fragmented energy, from the attention and awareness from the past, or the attention and awareness in the future, to now. So whatever brings you into the now is something that's really powerful. It helps you even transition in between meetings or in between home and work life and get here now, because people want all of you, not a half of you, because part of, even Einstein's theory is we cannot solve a problem from within the frequency that was created. So if we're trying to solve something where we're not in our highest vibration, we're only going to get like a 2 out of 10 versus at least an 8 or a 10 out of 10. So that's the second principle. And part of the third, aside from really getting in tune with nature and grounding, I love grounding. One question that's a really high quality question that I encourage people to ask of themselves when there's a situation or a person, place, or thing that doesn't appear to be turning out in the way that you actually would assert that you want it in, you can almost ask, or you can ask yourself the question, how is this serving me? Mm-hmm. If you ask a question in wonder from a space of expansion versus contraction, you can actually start to see some of the wisdom that's opening up for you, preparing you for, the next opportunity or challenge. And there are 3 really key techniques. And back to the gratitude, you can even look at the end of the day in a sense of rewarding yourself, because there's a lot of the I'm not good enough situation going on, because we know we're subject to a salary or commissions or sales, and you're only as good as your number. I mean, I totally get the pressure, totally, from executor all the way to MD CEO level. But if we actually look back and see on the day or in the past, who, what person, place, or thing, internal to the organization or external to the organization, have I served today? Literally reward yourself for it. And you start to see some of the handiwork you've been doing.
Yeah, beautiful. So the gratitude. I think one way would be really fun or easy also to incorporate then would be to maybe have a document on your phone. I love Evernote, it's easy. So create a document or something in there and make a file or a folder in there with all the things that light you up, and maybe some photos or images that really light you up.
Absolutely. And that really helps. I mean, backing up exactly, like just, everyone's got an iPhone. Even if you write a gratitude list because you have had that moment. See, you can't fabricate that by reading a book. This is knowledge it's a universal truth. And then there's science behind it and everything. But if you find that and document it for yourself, so it's your go-to, it's your fallback plan, because, the spiritual harmonizing intelligence truth, the acronym behind that, will always hit the fan and will continue to do so as long and give you the feedback you need to get into that point of presence. And if you do have it on your phone, you can pull it up at any person in time. And again, to your point, to stimulate the senses, an image, person, place, or thing that gives you that sense of open-heartedness. It's a great way to reflect and reset, because that kind of stuff is a feeling and using all your senses and smelling and senses versus reading that in a book.
Yeah. And so maybe also bringing some of nature into the office would be a powerful way to...
The reason I love nature, and this is part of, I have a feng shui background, form-based feng shui too, even to divert some of the, I don't even want to say the negative energy, but the intensity that a workplace can bring to you, having a lovely little cactus plant in the office, or even looking at earthing technologies, because there's a lot of free radicals and electromagnetic smog and frequencies rolling around the place. And that's kind of doing this to your nervous system. And so when you can reset, I'm not going to say go and, sun gaze at this time in the morning, if you want to, we can talk about it, especially for jet lag and for those of you who travel a lot. I do some very special energetic techniques for my clients for jet lag, so that they can acclimate themselves to the current environment and actually create the effective 8-hour sleep in their cells, which is incredibly powerful. But nature itself is right there, and the ionic essence of nature helps you reset. We're in buildings, we're in airplanes, we're in vehicles. Our feet aren't really earth, like that acupressure point on the bottom of the foot could really do with the earthing. It's anti-inflammatory, it's anti-stress, it's nature's around us all the time.
Yeah, how I wish that I had known you when I was flying. Oh my gosh.
Well, now you do.
Yeah.
And you text me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we both, it's so fun, I just love the way that technology does have its advantages in connecting us all, and that we had the opportunity to meet in person when you happened to be in Perth, and
I
everything
know.
was just so synchronistic, right?
It was
Really,
really beautiful. Like I was
yeah.
like, I'm in Perth. Where are you based? You're like, I'm in Perth. I'm like, I'm in Perth. And you're like, oh my goddess. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we both just share an absolute love for the ocean and being on
Oh
the
my
beach.
goodness.
Yeah.
Don't go. Yeah, you've seen our photos of the ocean.
Yeah, and speaking of the ocean, you have exposed me to experience the blue ocean minerals. And would you like to share a little bit about that? Because that may also be
Absolutely.
something.
And actually, I love that you mentioned that. Thank you. And for those that, of us that travel and we're in artificial light or in buildings and whatnot, one very, and stress, here's the basic math. Stress causes acidity in the body. Minerals alkalize acids. And for us in our internal body and cell to cell, cell to organ communication, the electrolytes in our body, and so a few of us, and you listening will actually appreciate recovery, magnesium rich sources of food and things like that, and drinks for recovery purposes. These are Vita Blue ocean minerals, literally blue OM, are extraordinary in that they help you alkalize the body. They're magnesium rich because they have the ionic nature. They're from the ocean, in fact, the Great Barrier Reef. And as far as a per capita of the most amount of prana and living beings on Earth, the Great Barrier Reef is one of 7 wonders, actually has that vibration. And they are absolutely amazing. Diluted with water or lemon juice. Tina, I'd love for you to share perhaps your experience, but I will also share that folks on the road and when you digest, like eating foods and wanting deep and sound sleep, these are absolutely incredible. And what you find is you sleep better, your hormones become more balanced, you actually supercharge your digestion ability. And even my long-term meditator clients who have literally been meditating for 40, 60 years, for example, with the transcendental meditation technique, when you're really tuned in, you get sustained effects of homeostasis. And that's what these minerals really facilitate. They're supreme. And my son takes them. I've taken them, pregnant. I've taken them for the last 10 years. They're just vibrant. I mean, Tina, what specific experience have you had with them since...
Yeah, I found when I first started taking it, it's like, well, it gave me the feeling, how I love being in the ocean. So, yeah, being able to take these gave me that sense of feeling filled up with the energy of the ocean, which just really, really, really supports my well-being. Yeah,
It really does. It really does. And like you and I, we both live by the ocean, and I make it a point to be by the
yeah,
ocean. The ionic nature of the ocean, and if you really look at the metaphoric principle, the ocean consists of or covers at least 70+% of the Earth's body. Our water body itself, also subject to planetary moon influence and whatnot, is around 70 to 80% too. So a dehydrated brain or a dehydrated person, let's say, with all due respect, who may be obese, might have 40% hydration, but someone who's more alkalized and actually does give themselves nutrition in the body, also through mineral supplementation, like this high quality one, will be very hydrated, like it hydrates your brain. And for me to operate on some of the spiritual levels that I'm blessed to be able to scan truth in matter and whatnot, it's imperative for me to nourish my structures, and that's why I absolutely adore the minerals.
yeah, beautiful. Well, what I really, really, really love about what you bring into the world is, besides your just gorgeous energy, you're just like, oh, yes, totally joy. I love it. Is your combination of really bringing the various, it's very practical, and it's also very energetic, and it's very spiritual, and it's holistic, and it brings all the different aspects of life, being here in this physical body, connected in with your source vibration and optimizing all of that. And I think what gets in the way is stress, or whatever stresses people out. So you have a beautiful way of supporting people with that. And
Yes.
I think, for people to be able to find out more about you, they can go to your website, which is sublime-energy.com.
Mhm.
And wow, is there anything else that you would like to share with us as we wrap up our joyful connections here today? You said to start off with really reminding to really connect in with the gratitude that brings you into the now.
Well, thank you for that. And yes, you can reach out to me either at sublime-energy.com or coachwithaliky.com. And I would be more than grateful for an opportunity to chat to you if there's a way you feel I could support you. Part of what I do is I really love to help people really emerge the life that they love to live in a way that they really gain and have the fulfillment so that they can do what they're here to do. And transmuting that stress into gold can mean so many things to so many people. There could be ailments involved, there could be infections involved, there could be mental stuff involved, environmental stuff, whatever it is that you feel or perceive to be hindering you from showing up for your extraordinary life. That's where I'm definitely excited and enthused to be able to support you to do that in my years of experience and with the background that I have on the supreme level. So thank you so much for the time with you, Tina. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you, Aliky, and thank you for everyone listening and watching, for being here, joining us inside the Divine Joy Circle. I say, until we meet again, go forth, let joy be your guide to a life that is worth waking up for. And until the next time, many joyful blessings.